to Pittsburgh Sports Line. We got a great show for you. Thanks for watching us. We got a lot of fans out there that stop in at our Pittsburgh Sports Line at level 20. We appreciate it. We had a very lively show there last night. But I want to thank you for watching our show. This is our 60th show, and we got a nice set line up here with these guys. And we got Smokin' Jim come back from his car breakdown, and we got Big Mike come down with an illness, and he joined us again.
Back from death's door.
Right, so we're going to have some great sports talk. You guys know on a Steeler win, we're all pumped up about it. Well, even on a Steeler loss, too. So we always start with what's on our mind, and we're going to take it away with Big Mike. What's on your mind?
Well, I had no clue what was on my mind tonight, but since you just mentioned it about the Steeler victory, and I know I'm out of my element because I'm sitting next to the guys that know about football, but I kind of learned something about something this weekend because the Steelers were going into a hostile environment, and I'm not going to, I'm not going to step on any toes. But the moral of my story is what I learned.
Okay, what did you learn?
I'm going to get there. Let me get there.
Okay.
The Steelers really were going into a hostile environment. I mean, a big rivalry team and on the road and all that jazz. And keep in mind, I don't know anything about football, but nevertheless, I'm getting there. They won. And they weren't supposed to win. They had no chance. They don't have the guy Roethlisberger, so there really wasn't much chance in hell. And the only reason why I know anything about this is people talk, and I listen to people that are kind of in the know before I got to the show tonight and this week about it was like a sudden death, not sudden death, but what was it, 3.14 seconds to go, and they kicked the field goal.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I learned. I learned that's a hell of an organization because they went and won a game they weren't supposed to win. And it all starts at the top. I mean, the team has been owned by the Rooneys from day one. Is that correct? And apparently, because they pulled out that victory, obviously the team, the Rooneys and the people that run the team know something. They put those people in place to pull off a victory like that. And I'm talking about from the top down. So what I learned is that's a hell of an organization, although I've known that because I used to be a football fan way back in the day. But hats off to the phone that just went off, and hats off to
Big Mike, they're watching you. That's one of the fans that call in.
There's one fan that watches. He's in Chicago. It's one of my best friends, Richard A. Karch, and the rest of his family.
We'll give a shout out to him. This will be on YouTube by the end of the week.
Hey, man, I love you. Know that, and the family and all that jazz. And getting back to where I was going is again, hats off to the Steelers and, well, for the Pirates and their ownership and management. Take a hike. And with that said and done, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas.
Big Mike, welcome back to the show. Thanks for what's on your mind. That was very insightful, bringing the Rooneys up and the character
awesome
of the team.
I mean, they've owned the team since day one,
1933.
Yeah, awesome. Good stuff.
That's very good. All right. What's on your mind, Smokin' Jim?
Hey, thanks, Talking Machine. What's on my mind is this week we're playing the San Diego Chargers, and most people out there by now know I'm an NFL scout, and I actually have my own publication. I do a draft report that goes out to all the general managers in the National Football League. Well, in 2004, my number one rated quarterback was Big Ben Roethlisberger, which wasn't a popular choice at the time, and I'm with the Steelers in 2004. And my good friend Bill Cowher wanted Phillip Rivers in the worst way. That particular year, the Steelers coaching staff coached in the Senior Bowl game, and Rivers just tore it up. I mean, Phillip Rivers was everything that Coach Cowher was looking for in a quarterback. The Steelers had the 11th pick overall, and if you remember that year, I really wasn't real excited about Eli Manning. Didn't think he'd be another Peyton Manning. Because his first 2 years at Mississippi he was beat out by a black quarterback. So he only started his last 3 years at Mississippi. And Phillip Rivers was going up the charts. And don't forget, Pitt had a pretty good quarterback, Rod Rutherford, that year.
A black quarterback?
A black quarterback. And they treated him like a black quarterback by not drafting him. And Tulane had a bum that my good friend Tom Donahoe took in the first round, J.P. Loftman. I knew he would be a bust. But
white quarterback.
A white quarterback.
Keep the score.
Yeah, the Steelers did everything they could. They did not want to, after Rivers and Eli Manning was off the board, the Steelers really didn't want Big Ben Roethlisberger. If you look back in 2004, mid-major quarterbacks. There weren't too many people excited about it. Ben never beat Byron Leftwich from Marshall, who was a year older in his whole career at Miami of Ohio. Chad Pennington really wasn't eating up the league and was considered a better quarterback when he was coming out than Ben was coming out in 2004. Steelers had pressure from the fans to draft a quarterback because they hadn't drafted one in the first round since Mark Malone, and that didn't turn out real well. But Terry Bradshaw before that in 1970. So it was 1970, 1980. Here was 2004. So they drafted Big Ben with the idea of maybe sitting him for 2 years. And they were still high on touchdown Tommy Maddox, who was turnover Tommy by then, and Charlie Batch. But 2 games into the season, both those guys went down, and the greatest quarterback in the history of the National Football League emerged. Ben went undefeated as a rookie quarterback, and I tell you what, his star is continuing on the rise. So even though my good friend Bill Cowher, who was doing a great job with the draft in 2004, even though he wanted Phillip Rivers in the worst way, he ended up getting a better quarterback, and I think we all can agree on that.
I know I agree.
Amen to that. Amen to that. He liked Phillip Rivers because he was an NC State boy.
Yeah, that's another reason.
That's where Bill and his wife came at.
That's a good point.
Those are some of the connections. Well, folks, that's that Fiction and Fact from Smoking Jim's Almanac. We'll have to have a special feature with that. And he wants to bring up some bad news after we talk about what's on our mind. But I'm not sure what the Prophet Haynor's going to bring out. And that's Haynor for all of you that watch the credits up there. It's not the E. And that's how simple it is there for you. So, Chip, what's on your mind?
Well, thanks, Alan. What's on my mind is Pitt football. What a job they are doing this year. I got to tell you, I started setting off the ball rockets. We're going to the BBVA Compass Bowl for the 3rd year in a row. I think we're the only team that's ever going to go to that bowl 3 times in their career, let alone 3 years in a row. And, there's been such a turnstile in head coaches at the University of Pittsburgh. And we thought, well, finally they got a coach that, went through some growing pains this year and then kind of redeemed himself at the end and made Pitt bowl eligible. And now there's a really good chance that he may not even be able to coach the team for the bowl game this year, which would be the 3rd year in a row that an interim coach coached them in the same bowl game. That's got to be a record. But what happened today, much to the surprise of the administrators at the University of Wisconsin, was their coach, Bielema. He took the head coaching job at Arkansas. Arkansas has been fishing around to replace Bobby Petrino ever since his escapades earlier in the season. And Arkansas had, a fairly highly ranked program. But, one of the prime head coaching jobs in college football is now wide open. Wisconsin just won the Big Ten championship for the 3rd year in a row, and they're a major Big Ten university. And Paul Chryst was the offensive coordinator there for 6 years before he came here, and prior to that, he played his college ball, got his college degree from Wisconsin, still lives in the area. Right now, I would have to think he's the favorite on the short list of potential coaches for Wisconsin. And I can't really say that, that this would bother me as much as what Todd Graham did last year. But once again, here would be a coach that, Pitt really did its homework on. They hired him, and this will be the 5th, potentially we could be looking at the 5th head coach in 4 years, going into the bowl game this year. And I think what really Pitt needs to do is they need to just get up on top of this and either come forward and say either he's talking to them or he's not talking to them. Don't let this fester. The report got out at 3:30, and the airwaves were just blowing up this afternoon. Everybody's running with the ball, and and they probably already have them packed up and moving into the to the mansion up in Madison, Wisconsin. So, what the Pittsburgh fans need to know is what's going to happen, and really, if Paul Chryst does leave. I mean, how much more is it going to take to get rid of Steve Peterson? He's made a complete laughingstock of the university's football program. And I mean, come on, if you're Paul Chryst and you could go to a school in the Big Ten, or you could go and, coach a Pitt team that's going to, who knows what conference it's going to be in next week. They try to find the weakest conferences out there because soon enough they're going to find one they can win. But something needs to get done. But that's what's on my mind.
I think that's on a lot of our minds, Chip. And I'm going to start a new segment after this, What's on Our Minds, that we're going to revisit what's on our minds because it starts a nice discussion on some of the topics that are here. So instead of coming back in the last 15, 20 minutes, I'd rather do it while we're fresh. And I know Smokin' Jim had a special announcement there, and it got stolen, but that's only because we have inside info here. But I was thinking about this for the last few weeks, but we had a full team here, so I'm going to put it into play. And now, what's on my mind is, first of all, if you can get a shot of this, Matt. I got to promote something here. This is in the Bethel Park neighborhood, the second annual Bethel Park Community Center Holiday Blood Drive. And everybody needs blood during the holidays. So it's Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Bethel Park Community Building, 5151 Park Avenue, Bethel Park, 15102. If you want to get an appointment and register, call Kathy at 412-209-7622. And you can even go online, centralbloodbank.org, and look for the sponsor code. That's C604. And if you do that, Smokin' Jim, you might want to donate blood. You get 2 Carmike movie tickets, and some of those models that you bring to the show on Monday night, you could get these tickets on the 29th. Tell them it's a New Year's celebration next year and go to the movie with them.
Right.
So there's a thought for a gift there that's not going to cost you anything but your blood. So how bad is that? Just a pint. I'm sure you can give a pint for a good cause. And I don't mean to make fun of it, but it is a great thing to do. And there are shortages during the winter seasons because of weather and people are more housebound.
And Lance Armstrong, you're not invited.
Yeah, we won't go there. Let me give out the number again. Call Kathy to register. Smokin' Jim. Smokin' Jim, get this number, 412-209-7622. Call Kathy. And then the code online, since you're an online type of guy, centralbloodbank.org, C604, and then you can get your tickets. Now what's on my mind is, I know we killed the subject of Steelers last night. One guy on the show really doesn't like the Steelers. Another guy predicted 8-8. So I'm here to say my 11-5 prediction is still out there, still on the table. Did I expect them to win last week? No. But if you guys listen to the marathon that Chip and I had, we both come out and said the Steelers will win some way, somehow. You can even check the film, the video, whatever you want. Go to YouTube right now and see if we're telling you the truth. But that's the type of thing we bring to the show. Call 412-831. Big Mike hasn't been here, 3304.
Would you think I forgot?
Oh, did you?
I will know.
Okay, well, thank you. So you can call in. And part of the point is, look at the character. We always talk about guys and their heart and when they play. Charlie Batch knew he had a bad game. This could be his last game. Look at the heart. Look at the grittiness. There's a Pittsburgh guy. Another guy was talking about all these brittle, I can't even say it anymore, brittle brothers. He told so many of it that I learned new insights that Bill Cowher is still alive and well. And Smokin' Jim has some of the great insights, but like all of us, sometimes you get caught up in the emotion of it. Do I think they can win every game? Sure. Do I think they will? No. I always am hopeful, but I know they can't win them all. And this is one of those victories that you got to savor. It's a great one. Who cares about some of the theatrics? Look at Ike Taylor got hurt, and they still performed at a level. Look at the #1 pass defense in the NFL, Steelers. Who would think? You've piecemealed that. Woodley's out. Look, we've had players coming and going. Ziggy Hood looked like nobody on Cleveland. Now all of a sudden he could play football. He was around. Timmons has played this year. You're like, okay, who turned him loose? Troy come back. At least he was able to play the whole game. So I'm hopeful for the rest of the season. If he can last more than a quarter, I'm good at the end of the year with that, because when you're only that big and you throw yourself around like a human missile, you're going to last a little longer. And we need to at least last these next 4 games out here and get to that 11-5. So,
Well,
and that's what's on my mind. And here we're going to start our new edition Because look at what we stir up here. Everybody wants to talk about what was on our minds. Let's revisit what's on our
Well,
minds.
what's on our mind is, this Sunday is going to be the first time since the second game of the 2004 season that Ike Taylor has not started for the Steelers.
Wow.
That's a pretty amazing record.
135 games.
That's a pretty amazing record considering the position he plays. He's out facing the top wide receivers of the league, and he's out there on his own. And you see a lot of these guys blow out knees and Achilles tendons, etc. That's pretty amazing. But, the thing that I find really intriguing about the Steelers right now is, I felt very strongly that the Steelers were going to beat the Ravens last week, and I really it didn't bother me who was at quarterbacking. I knew it wasn't going to be Ben. But, I knew the Steelers were gonna play them tough enough because, to be honest with you, the turnovers in the first game against the Ravens is what gave the Ravens their point, and then they ran back that punt for a return. Other than that, they didn't score offensively. They only scored 6 points. Steelers defense hasn't been giving up very many points at all, and the secondary's a big reason for that. But if you look at the last 4 games, I mean, the Steelers are actually positioned. They could win out. I mean, still they got to play the games, but this is kind of like reminiscing of a little bit of the late 2005 season when Cowher's team, had no business making the playoffs. They made it on the last week of the season. They went on a 6-game winning streak and brought home a trophy.
Sure did.
Did they win both of their last 2 Super Bowls as a wild card?
No. The first Super Bowl 40 as a wild card. The next one they were a division winner.
But they didn't have home field in the.
They didn't. They ended up, I believe, with home field on the second one, but not because they had it. The number 1 seed lost,
Okay, I got you.
and they were a number 2 seed.
Chip, I wanted to ask you your initial segment about what's on your mind. You were talking about the Pitt coach, and you were going to say something about that. Is that correct?
The Chip covered it.
Okay, but
Yeah,
okay. Now my question.
That's why we don't talk before the show.
Isn't that a scoop of a scoop? My question
Yes.
too is: there's like a 5 or 6 week lapse between the end of Pitt's last game and when they play their bowl game.
Yeah, they're actually playing their bowl game after the first of the year, after all the big bowls are played, and before the BCS championships.
So there's an
played.
X amount of week lapse because right now.
Six, close to 7.
What does it matter who coaches? They don't even know the guy. I mean, it could be a new guy, it could be an old guy with a 6 weeks lapse. 6 week lapse. I mean, that's a lot. I don't understand that end of the season, end of November for collegiate football, and then it's after the first of the year when the bowl, or right at the holiday season. There's a big time frame. The guys don't play
They're
ball.
student athletes, so at least they get to do their finals.
Where is he? Yeah, exactly.
Well,
And-
you know what?
and that helps the student
To
athlete.
be honest with you, they could take the time that they spend these next 6 weeks running a single elimination tournament and actually having all these teams, play and kind of like they do with the NCAA basketball tournament. They could do that, and it really wouldn't take anything because, is anybody foolish enough to believe that these are actually student athletes?
Yes.
I mean, theoretically they are. They take up scholarships, but, how many of them leave college before they get a degree, which, this is another things that bothers me about college sports. You get these athletes come in, and they take a 4-year degree. So that they take that scholarship away from somebody that could have possibly been at school for 4 years. Then they leave after a year. So somebody lost out on that opportunity for a scholarship that could have deserved it more than they are, and they're just using it as a stepping stone.
Well,
So-
there are some schools that do have kids, graduate and get their degrees. Like Penn State was one. I know that's a notorious selection by some people right now, but they did graduate a higher percentage than almost anybody else from what I had heard over the years. So, I mean, there are some schools, and there's even some quarterbacks out there that do get their degrees before they go to the NFL, unlike some of the insights that Smokin' Jim Frazier gave us. But Smokin' Jim, I had to ask you, what do you think about Chris possibly leaving? Is that a right move for him, or is it, not such a good move, or what's your insights on that?
Well, it would be a dream come true. I would pay for his jitney to the airport if he left. I'm not a fan of his in this area. With the University of Pittsburgh, you need a colorful head coach. You need a guy with a personality. You need somebody that's going to be able to go into kids' homes and sell them. one of the best recruiters on this planet for high school football players is Tom Bradley. Chip mentioned it prior to the show. I think Tom Bradley would be an excellent fit. He's somebody that would be here at the University of Pittsburgh. He should have got the head coaching job at Penn State. He would be here at the University of Pittsburgh until he retired, and nobody out-recruits Tom Bradley. He has a system for recruiting, and it's second to none. And one day I'll tell you guys how he does it.
I'd be interested to hear, but Tom Bradley he'd add stability to the program, and he'd add a dynamic recruiter. I mean, I listened to Paul Christ, and, the guy was, cutting his teeth on his first head coaching job this year, made a lot of mistakes. But, every time I listen to him talk, he puts me to sleep. He's probably one of the most boring people that I've ever heard interviewed. And like Jim said, to be an effective high school recruiter, to recruit for college, you've got to be dynamic. You've got people, you got to sell yourself. You got to make people want to come with you. And I just don't see that he has that. But
well, I'm going to jump on that bandwagon. I was the guy that was telling you when the season started, he goes, I wish I had 2 more weeks of training camp. So, that doesn't show me that you're ready to be a head coach.
Yeah, he did
because
that.
even if you thought that, I wouldn't say that to the public.
Well, no, but he did that because he was 0-2 after the first 2 games.
But no,
he thought they were scrimmages.
No, and here's my point. He also knew that they weren't ready to play.
Right.
Look at Youngstown State. How do you get beat by Youngstown State?
I still don't know.
And that's why I don't think that he's going to get offered that job at Wisconsin.
Well,
even though the players are asking for him, from what I heard.
Barry Alvarez he worked for Barry Alvarez for a lot of years. And Barry Alvarez is still the athletic director up there. And one thing they say about Paul Christ is he's fiercely loyal. And I could see him leaving. I also hear that he's a man of his word. But you'd get this guy caught in a dilemma, does he honor his commitment here, or does he go and chase his lifelong dream,
Is there any penalties in their contract? Is there any, you can't...
They have put buyout clauses in these contracts, but the university that wants them, they'll just write a check for it. That's all. If they got a $10 million buyout, Wisconsin's writing a check to $10 million to the University of Pittsburgh.
Well, Wisconsin's going to the BCS game again because Ohio State can't go by default. So they got $17 million to play around with. So yeah. I don't think the buyout will be a problem.
Even if it's $5 million to get Chris if they wanted him. But I don't think that loyalty with Alvarez is going to carry through with Chris. He might be a great offensive coordinator and he might be very loyal to his players. But I don't want them coming into the houses and playing the same type of game, telling them, look at the team we're going to bring here.
Well, see, it's a little bit different in Wisconsin because that's a university now that Alvarez built, who's from Burgettstown, Pennsylvania. Oh. Barry Alvarez, and he was the one that I'm a little mad at because he made Pitt hire. He highly recommended Chris to Pitt. He called up Pitt, the athletic director of Pitt, and sold him on the idea. But when you play for a team in the Big Ten like Wisconsin, it sells itself. If you're a running back, you want to go there. If you want to play strong defense, if you want to get better, Wisconsin is a team that Barry Alvarez built that great program. So you don't really have to be a dynamic person. But if you're coaching at Miami of Ohio, Pitt, Youngstown State, Cal State, you really have to be an exceptional recruiter and a salesman to get people in. But, teams like, used to be Penn State, Ohio State, USC, Florida, Alabama. You think that
Did you miss anybody yet?
You think
UCLA,
Nick Saban, you think Nick Saban's going out on the road anymore? Man, people want to go to Alabama. They want to play for Alabama.
They don't want him in the house. Yeah. No. They don't want Saban in the house. You hear how he is and how miserable he is. If he come into my house, I'd be like, hey, you know what? Hey, you're a great coach. Thanks for getting everybody upset. Even the dog's mad here right now. So.
And with the Big Ten, even more so with the Big Ten, snatching up Rutgers and who else was it? Maryland. They got into 2 of the bigger TV markets that the Big Ten Network's going to be becoming, which is going to reap them a huger windfall because they're going to have a bigger market share. And you know, and Wisconsin has just been you know an offensive lineman factory for years.
Yes,
I mean,
Good point.
you a big strapping young country boy, and I mean they teach you how to knock people over up there, and they ship them off to the NFL. You'd be surprised at how many those big offensive linemen
That's true.
that come from there.
I want to transition to the NFL since we're still in football. Before I do, the last ping on his phone was a partial hockey score. Now,
What country?
no clue.
Did you see Russian? Because I think Malkin just scored.
He had
I
a
got
big-
that
he had a-
on my phone here.
He had a big game last night. What was I'm cramming for tonight's sports show. Like I'm reading the sports page, right? It was really boring today, but there was a picture of Tomlin, and he had his fingers like this. Did you see it in the Post Gazette? He had his fingers like this, and the caption underneath said, "Who's the coach of the Ravens?"
Harbaugh.
Harbaugh.
John Harbaugh.
Yeah, he said Harbaugh wanted to let everybody know that his handshake was sincere. So what was all that? What's his?
Because of
what's
the
his-
last game.
Let me tell you something. Our good friend Magic Mike Migliori has always said, "There's nothing worse than a slow day in the newsroom." And if it's a reporter with nothing to write about, and I'm telling you what, it's been a waste of. I'll say this about it and nothing else. It's a non-issue. It's nothing worth talking about. So the two guys shook hands at the end of the game. Big deal. It's a big deal if they don't shake hands. You know, who cares? I mean, by the time the game was over, that ball went through the uprights. It clicked off the TV onto the next channel. You know, I'm not looking around to see if these guys hug each other and get all warm and fuzzy. You know.
Well, then what happened the previous game, which was only 2 weeks ago, right?
Right.
Yeah. What happened? Maybe
Well,
we could snow.
I don't know. It was 2 weeks ago.
Harbaugh here's the point of it. Harbaugh likes to be controversial. He likes to put the other team down when he does well. When he wins, he's not always that gracious. So that was the only little point there, if there is anyone. But here's the other thing. Our man Tom Bradley was interviewed today by a gentleman, and he asked him, he goes, "Hey, Tom, have you ever had a problem with a handshake on the field?" He goes, "Never." And the guy goes, "Well, why is that?" He goes, "When the game's done, that's it. It's just part of sportsmanship. If you want to shake hands, you just shake hands, and maybe under your breath when you're walking away, I'll get that son of a gun the next game." So, I mean, that's a class act when you talk about it. And that seems to be the difference. There's some people that really like the Harbaughs. Well, they do get some winners out there, and they get players motivated. So time will tell with that.
I don't know what the answer was to my question, but okay, that's cool.
Okay. They don't like each other. Okay.
Mike Thomas, he seems such like an in control type of guy.
Where was that ping from?
That's another partial.
And speaking about the partial hockey score, you know
Good point.
The,
Nice segue.
the hockey players and a group of owners are meeting without Donald Fair or Bettman.
Bettman.
Okay, without Gary Bettman. And some of the owners that are mixed in with these conversations are the owner of the Philadelphia Flyers, one of the owners of the Boston Bruins, Ron Burkle, majority owner of the Penguins. I believe the other one is the new owner of the Tampa Bay Lightning, who they were very excited to get into the league because he's a very strong marketing background and everything. And they're meeting with some of the top players, Sid Crosby being one of them. And, you know, I'm hoping that this can break the log jam because, you know, they didn't bring Ron Burkle in for nothing. Ron Burkle is a very, very successful businessman. He's a multi-billionaire, and he has a way of making things happen. And, you know, when I came in here and shut off the radio, they were still in closed-door meetings with the players. This was still going on. They'd been in there for 5 hours. So hopefully, you know, they can figure out some way to come to some type of agreement. Maybe we can get hockey started by the 1st of January. I'm very skeptical, though. I mean, I've pretty much written off the season this year, but if they can find some way to save it, they owe it to the NHL to do it.
Well, that's part of the problem. Burkle is a businessman, and a lot of the people that work in Pittsburgh have bars, restaurants, taxi services, jitneys. I think if you go right around there, that's the jitney capital of the world in Pittsburgh. I mean, unofficially, of course. We're number one there. Consol Energy Center's there. Because I was born a few streets up there on Pride Street, in case you want to know that. So that happens. But getting serious for a moment here. You're talking about Burkle. He has good relationship with Sid and the players on the team. They highly respect him. The only problem is you have Steve Fear there, you know, the representative Bill Daly, who's really a tough guy when it comes to negotiate. He's like Bettman's enforcer there, like he was in hockey or whatever it was. So cooler heads, I don't think they'll prevail because 50-50 is on the table from both sides, only with a few tweaks like we've talked about. And they're in federal mediation, which is basically going nowhere.
Well, they weren't really technically in federal mediation. They had a mediator sit in, but it was non-binding mediation. So it was basically like asking me to sit in on the meetings and and mediate. So what am I going to do? Sit there and drink coffee and say, wait,
that's
he's
what
talking.
that's what the federal mediation program is. It's not binding arbitration. That's what the public doesn't realize. There are differences. In businesses and unions, they'll do that because they figure that they can facilitate some type of agreement coming about. That's how they do those things. It's worked out over the years. I was involved in one, and I'll tell you, back in '92. Well, I'll tell you right now, it didn't work out that well. So we lost the Pittsburgh Press.
Yeah, I was going to say the press is gone and the post.
Well, here's why. Yeah, but the background is the Pittsburgh Press was getting out of Scripps Howard owned it. They were getting more into online TV and radio and internet. And they didn't want to be in the newspaper business. They had closed down many of their flagship newspapers. So in Pittsburgh, they figured, we'll just screw around with everybody, because I was in those talks. They kept making one more ridiculous offer. Imagine you have an offer that you start with. Usually that's the worst offer, right? I mean, you guys have negotiated a couple things, even if it's a car. So the worst offer is your first one. Their worst offer was their last one. Really? So they didn't want to be in business. They ended up swapping out a paper with the Block family afterwards. That's some of the history to this, if you want to know. I know it's a little off the sports subject, no. But it does. They do report on sports people, and sometimes it's a different story than what they print and what they tell you about.
And so, you know, to speak to, again, Big Mike Butero there gave up to the you know, Pirates management.
I knew we'd come back to that.
Right now, you know, they're in the winter meetings in baseball, and there are some things that are going on. The Pirates are picking up some minor league pitchers and stuff like that. Smart move the Pirates made was signing Russell Martin. You know, there's a kid that was a catcher for the Rangers. His name is Napoli. He ended up signing with the Red Sox for $39 million for 3 years, which was, you know, more than what the Pirates were going to pay him. And anyhow, the Red Sox would have outbid them anyhow. But Russell Martin was a smart pickup because he's an upgrade from Rod Barajas. Even though he only batted .211, he had a .311 on-base percentage. And playing part-time last year, he hit 21 home runs. And the big kicker on him is the fact that he threw out 24% of the runners that attempted to steal from him, which is something that, you know, the Pirates didn't throw out 24 runners all year last year in both catchers. So bringing him in was an upgrade. They made arbitration eligible for all the people that were eligible. They let Jeff Karstens go. He was a liability. He spent more time on the disabled list.
Right.
Because, you know, I mean, he was a good, effective pitcher when he pitched. He was constantly on the disabled list, and you couldn't really count on him. And now they're floating around Joel Hanrahan and Garrett Jones as possible trade bait, which, you know, kind of makes sense because they're going into their arbitration eligibility this year, which would mean they would, you know, the arbitrator will either award them, you know, a salary. They're going to make a proposal. Pirates make a proposal. The arbitrator rules. They're going to be free agents at the end of the year. Okay, so you know you're looking at Joel Hanrahan's salary to probably double this year. You know, if he stays with the Pirates, and his value is as high as it can be right now. Now the Pirates do have some holes to fix. You know, he may be somebody that they could use to get a regular right fielder that, you know, that can hit, produce some runs. Garrett Jones, right now, his value couldn't be any higher. He had a career year last year, but, you know, the fact is he's 30. He's going to be 31 this year. You know, do you really want to invest a lot of time and money in him where, you know, from where he is right now, you know, it's more likely he's going to decline faster than he is going to get better, you know? So, you know, the Pirates are making some moves. You know, things are happening, and it'll be interesting over the next month to see how this all plays out.
And that's why there's winter meetings. The optimism runs high. We grabbed all these pitchers. I mean, I looked at some of the stats. I'm hopeful they'll improve because they got a lot of live arms now. Not always good records, but we do need some more arms out there, as we found out this year. They did win 79 games. I was extremely disappointed because when you're 16 up and you go to 3 below, but I'm still a Pirate fan. It's winter meeting time. I'm happy. I think maybe we can get to that. What's that magic number, Chip? So, we'll try there because I'll put my annual bet out there. We'll have that challenge in the spring.
And we'll have that
challenge
in the spring. But, you know, I mean, the Pirates, it doesn't appear that the Pirates are sitting pat on what they did last year. You know, everybody knows that there's some improvements that needed to be made, and they're starting to work on them, but they're doing it within a budget because, you know, one of the biggest gripes I've heard over the last few months is the Pirates don't pay any money. You have to invest money into payroll. That doesn't always guarantee you success. Take a look at the Florida Marlins, okay? Last year they spent $150 million in payroll. They finished last, okay? Now, you know, you can't do any worse. They couldn't put any people into their new stadium, so now the ownership blew up the team. I mean, you know, look at the Red Sox. The Red Sox were equally as horrible last year, and they have a couple of $100 million payroll. So, you know, spending money, you know, just for the sake of spending it because you have it, doesn't always make sense. I like the way they're doing things, and we'll see what kind of fruit it bears this year.
Well, let's be optimistic there. And I wanted to bring up probably a sad note for Big Mike. A-Rod got operated on. Or he's going to for his other hip.
Exactly. He has to rehab. I don't know why they call it rehab prior to an operation, but he has to build up muscle.
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing as Mo Rivera did. I guess that's, you know what, as a matter of fact, 3 years ago I had 4 operations on my shoulder at one time, and I was in rehab.
Are you a lefty or a righty?
I am a right-hander.
Oh, okay. Well, that didn't affect your pitching arm.
No, it did not. And I'm throwing out a pitch right now. So I did rehab prior to surgery.
He's throwing a changeup.
Yeah, they went. I'm calling it for a left-hander now. So he is. Oftentimes you hear about an athlete. Well, why did he wait until? Well, basically it's because they rehab your prior. I don't understand the.
Well, the watching down knees need replaced much younger than they should be. Hip replacements, and because basically what they're doing is your body is built to carry a certain amount of weight. You know, so you start using steroids and you're packing on all this muscle, which is stressing your tendons and stressing out your joints. You know, and you blow yourself up your body frame isn't set to carry that kind of weight. And then after you get off the juice, you know, it kind of, you know, you lose all that muscle mass, but all the damage is already done. And that's why you find a lot of these guys have hip and knee replacement surgeries. And, you know, fortunately for the Yankees, they have his contract insured. So, you know, the $114 million that they owe him for the next 3 years, he'll end up getting paid.
Wow. Wow. There's some fiction and fact from Chip Hayner's almanac.
Yeah,
listen to that, folks.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, he's getting, you know, he's getting surgery after the first of the year. He is not going to. The earliest that he can see the field is probably going to be July. You know, he misses half the baseball season, and he's getting paid $27 million. And the only thing that's going to be the people that are going to be the most upset are starting pitchers and relief pitchers in the American League because their strikeout totals are going to go down.
You know, enough of battering Big Mike over there. Everybody knows he's a true Yankee fan. So, look, he took it with a grain of salt there. Well, let's change the subject here. How about some Pitt basketball here? Smoking Jim, do you have any insights on the Jamie Dixon Pitt basketball team here? They got a couple guys that have done pretty well the last couple of weeks.
Well, the outstanding leader Jamie Dixon is that, you know, followed in the footsteps of the true great basketball coach that turned that program around.
Who's that? I forget. That's so long ago, and he's a little bit in trouble out there in California right now. I forget his name.
But I tell you what, they had a drunken kid, had a DUI, fell asleep at a light. But Jamie Dixon is pushing to get him back into the lineup because he says no one he's ever been around has been more remorseful. So he's talking to the athletic director and everybody to get him back in the lineup. So that's your Jamie Dixon. If you can help him win one more game, Drunk
Sure.
or no drunk, he'll put you in there.
And that's the sad way it is in college, that's in, college or professional sports. But tomorrow night's a big game. It's the city game. Pitt's playing Duquesne down. I believe they're playing down at the Console.
Yes.
So that's a big game for city basketball enthusiasts. I don't know if they'll sell it out or not. But another thing,
It's hard to sell that.
Smoking Jim was talking about the previous head coach here, Ben Howland, who left the program in really good shape, and Jamie Dixon was one of his assistant coaches who took over for him. But both of them, cut their coaching teeth with a gentleman who unfortunately passed away this weekend. He was the coach of the St. Louis Billikens, but prior to that, he made his name famous at the University of Utah. Was Rick Majerus. He unfortunately passed away, 64 years young. He'd had a history of heart problems and everything, and he was a big man, and he carried a few more pounds on him. But he was one hell of a basketball coach, and my thoughts and prayers go out to his family and his friends and his associates. But that touches Coach Dixon here as well as Coach Howland, because they both coached underneath him.
Wow. See that? There's a lot of connections here with the sports world out there. And, hey, I forgot to thank a couple people that were at the Level 20 Sports Lounge. In my beginning of what's on my mind, I did forget. Chief, thanks for that pumpkin cheesecake. It was delicious. I didn't have any fries because Smoking Jim brought one of his prettiest models there. India was there. And he's actually, I want to announce this to the public in case they don't see the other show, that he's in the process of writing a book about her story. So good luck to you on that one. If you need a couple people that help write books, I have a couple guys that are professionals. I'm serious. I know a few people.
Wow.
I'm not going to drop their names on the air because I don't want to embarrass them yet. But once we come out with inking a deal, then we'll talk about it off the show.
Sounds good.
But there's a
I'll
lot
have
of...
to sign a copy of it for my lovely wife. She's one of your biggest fans.
I appreciate that, Jim.
Exactly, and now that Smoking Jim is reading his second book since I've known him, I'm not talking about the one he read previously, by Rako War Sanders. That's another book that I recommend, whether you're blessed or cursed. It is a great book. I did finish it, and if anybody's listening, Rako wrote a heck of a story. It's a true story. And it's just an inspiration to anybody that's been in a bad situation and come out as a world champion. A true tribute to Rako. And I just wanted to bring that out. Then there was another guy that I always talk about. You hear me talk about Grasshopper and a guy at the Shop and Save Deli. Well, I have a little bit of a fan club out there, so I have to at least say hi to Ann, Roy, a couple of the other ladies. Well, Joe and Heather stopped by last night, and Heather got ill and had to leave. And she had some type of bug or something, and she left. So thanks for showing up. Wish you could have stayed for the show. It was a great show last night. Covered a lot of topics. That hour flew by. Just wanted to thank all of you again for watching it. Hey, thanks to Devin Shea. Thanks to Joe, our cameraman Matt tonight. Last week, while Chip and I were here, they locked us in the room. We didn't even have a cameraman. So look with you two in here.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Didn't even have a glass of water.
Right.
I was parched.
I feel like it's only doing half the show, or maybe a quarter of the show.
But you know what? I'd like to get everybody's feedback on the incident that happened last week in the NBA. And Big Mike, if you weren't aware of what happened, there's.
How could you get my feedback then?
He's going to give you a little insight.
I'll give you the thumbnail sketch of it.
Just the facts, Joe.
Last week, the San Antonio Spurs were supposed to play the Miami Heat on national TV on Thursday night. And when the schedule for the season came out, the coach of the San Antonio Spurs, who has a lineup of aging stars, looked at that game, and that was right in the midst of them playing 5 games in 7 days. They played 4 games in 6 days. So he sent his star players home on a commercial flight, and he fielded a team without any of the stars on a nationally televised game. And the commissioner of basketball flipped out because the Spurs sent all their stars home. The game was played. The Spurs lost by 3 points. It was a very competitive game. And the next day, commissioner of the NBA fined the San Antonio Spurs $250,000
Wow.
for being detrimental to the spirit of the league by sending home their star players, even though none of them were injured. They were saving them to play Saturday night, and Saturday night they were playing the team with the best record in the league up to that point, which was the Memphis Grizzlies. But do you think that the commissioner of any of the major sports has the right to dictate to a coach who he can play and who he cannot?
Well, here's my point to let Big Mike think about it for a second, because we talked about it
I'd like to
briefly
hear everybody's
last night.
thoughts
We're
on
all
it.
going to do it, but I figured I'd give Big Mike a longer time to think about that. He can ponder that a little bit while he's a very insightful man, deep thinker. My idea with being a commissioner, if you have certain rules and they don't break the rules, you could play any player, you could sit any player down. The only question I would have is if you don't have the players travel with the team. To me, that could be a problem. I think like in other sports, have everybody with the team, let them sit on the bench and root them in there. This is a team sport, right?
Well,
There's no I in that team. Don't they talk about that? There's no I.
How many guys are on a basketball squad?
12.
12 guys?
And so 5 of them, actually 6 of them play. There's always a rotating guy, right?
They
So if
they
they-
dressed 9 for the game.
They just, okay, so, and 6 play. If they send 4 home, that means they only have 6. How many did you say?
Yeah,
How many did you say they dressed?
you know what?
He said 9.
9.
Minus
I
4.
I believe they have 12 or 13 on the roster at any given time.
Yeah, I
But if
thought
they
it
send 4 home, then they have.
They had 9 players, so they would have been. They
Guys
would
foul
have
out,
had
guys
13.
get hurt. You got to have those guys on the bench. Do I think that the commission? Oh, let me see. Let me do my thinker. I definitely think that there should have been some sort of like you can't set it. You have to set a precedent, and the precedent you don't want to set is letting that happen.
But do you make up rules as things go on? I mean,
No.
this what they did was there's no rules that says you can't do that.
Well, then how the commissioner find them?
That's the point of this.
That's what
Well,
the
you
point
can't
is.
just say.
That's what my point is. You see, you know, all of this starts, and I believe that the Lord Goodell, that's 2 O's, not 1, Roger. He does whatever he wants to do as far as disciplining teams, players, coaches, head linesmen, cheerleaders, whatever he wants to do, he can find somebody for. It makes no sense, no rhyme, no reason. And makes up rules as he goes. You know, when they started finding James Harrison, nobody knew that was on the horizon. He didn't find out until he got a pink slip in his paycheck that said you've been docked $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. So, you know, my point is, you know, okay, if this was not what you intended to do, then you set out a league-wide memorandum and say, look, an incident happened last night. This will no longer be tolerated, and if you do something like this, there will be repercussions. Yeah, I could see you doing that, but I mean, just to say I'm mad, and while you're upset with something, you make a ruling on it instead of thinking it through.
Right.
You know,
my
he was
my
a
vote
knee-jerk
is,
reaction.
Chip, I'm going to vote. He shouldn't have been able to do that.
However, somebody threw out the precedent word earlier. Correct me if I'm wrong, I always allow myself to be corrected. The first commissioner of any sport was baseball, and that started because of the 1919 Black Sox.
Kennesaw Mountain Landis.
You're
And-
bringing up one of my favorite players who got banned.
Yeah, me too. Except I didn't know how
That
he
was
was my
the
favorite
commissioner.
player. But a year after, they played for 2 more years. Those Black Sox. They didn't get banned by the commissioner because they were all. I can't remember if all.
The
if they
case
were-
was thrown out.
something like that. Whatever happened, but the commissioner whom they gave that job to, and they said you basically have unlimited powers. He whacked those guys. There was no precedent.
Well,
set
they
for that.
wanted him to do that. He was actually a judge.
Yeah, but he gave up his judgeship.
Yeah, he gave the judgeship
to
up
become a mountain of.
because he could become a dictator.
Exactly. So
If you study any history on that,
I do.
it was unfair with what they did.
It was, but look, that's what the commissioner's job. It's not what it's unfair, but that's what the commissioner's job is to do. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but they like Goodell.
Dictate.
They yeah, sure. So
Oh, but Jim, what are your thoughts about that?
he doesn't care about mine. I wasn't done. But go ahead.
Go ahead.
Are you for it or against it?
What he did,
Yes.
I'd have to look it up.
Can we get a yes or no?
Am I for or against him finding the team for sending their players home. I'm ambivalent.
Okay, you're abstaining.
I'm abstaining. Yeah.
Okay.
That went over my head. Big words. But, you know, I think that any coach should be able to coach his team the way he sees fit. Nobody knows that the coaches know their players better than anybody else. That's why they're the coach. Only thing that I would feel strongly for the commissioner to have come down strong on, I think all teams in the National Football League does a good job here. All teams need to be in the city that they're playing 24 hours in advance, just in case there's some kind of problems with the flight, in case there's some kind of weather problems, a hurricane. Other than that, you can't. I don't believe that it is in your job description to find somebody how they want to run their basketball team, because the goal is to win a championship. And the best way for San Antonio to win a championship is for those guys to be fresh down the stretch and not wear them out early in the season.
And that's what that was Popovich's whole logic. And I got to tell you that I do agree with that. And I think one of the things that maybe David Stern took exception to, and hockey and the NBA are fairly similar. One's an 80-game season, one's an 82-game season. And it kind of goes ahead and shows, kind of like, well, some of these games aren't as important as others, and they're getting, trying to get national television contracts. They've got obligations to networks to get certain ratings, and if they're not putting their star players out there, believe me, if you were a San Antonio fan and you loved watching Tim Duncan play, and you put that game on and you saw he wasn't even in the city, you're moving on to the next station.
However, the only player that I would pay money to watch play, I always said that, was Mark McGwire. And if I would have been down at Pirate Stadium and I would have paid money to see my man Mark McGwire hit some home runs and he didn't show up, I tell you what, we'd have to be tearing something up that day. So
you mean that all you can eat seats? You'd have left.
I paid money to see Mark McGwire. Tell everybody at Three Rivers Stadium.
Oh.
Three Rivers Stadium's never done this in the history. They cut in on the Pittsburgh Steelers game when Mark McGwire hit his 69th and 70th home run. It was unbelievable. The fans went crazy. I always said that's the only player that I would pay money to go see play baseball or any other sport was Mark McGwire, my favorite baseball player.
And you know what?
Time.
That dovetails right out into our next topic.
He saved the game.
Yeah, he did.
He and Sammy Sosa, the steroid boys. But speaking
And that
of the
caused Barry to
steroid
take
boys,
drugs.
speaking of steroid boys, we've got this year for the first time quite a number of the major players in the steroid scandal that affected baseball. They're now eligible for the Hall of Fame. You've got Barry Bonds, you've got Sammy Sosa, you've got Roger Clemens, you've got Mike Piazza, you've got Rafael Palmeiro, Rafael Palmeiro is probably one of only about 5 baseball players that have gotten 3,000 base hits and 500 home runs in their career. And he'll never be elected to the Hall of Fame because he tested positive for steroids. And pretty much by January the 9th, they're going to announce who's made the Baseball Hall of Fame. And you need 75% of the vote. And I made this prediction last night on Pittsburgh Sportsline at Level 20, and I'll make this prediction again here tonight. Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Sammy Sosa, and the rest of them, they're not going to get more than 20% of the vote. They're going to get less than 20% of the vote this year because the sports writers just have it in for them because they feel that they cheated, they disrespected the game, and it really has nothing to do with race or anything like that. It's just simply the fact that they cheated. They got caught cheating, and it goes just against the, what do they call that? What the intent of the game was meant to be.
Integrity.
Integrity. Thank you. I stand corrected.
Well, wait, Clemens wasn't. I don't even think Bonds was.
Bonds admitted that he took steroids. He didn't know what he was taking. That's what he admitted in.
It was
in
clear,
court.
so he couldn't see.
Yeah, but
Elko gave it to him by
He thought it was acne cream to cover up the boils on his back from his steroid abuse.
And he didn't know his head was getting so big.
He wasn't Piazza, Barnes,
Piazza
Clemens.
wasn't taking it. That's my man. In case anybody wants to know that.
he was tied up in
Jeff
it. But
Bagwell,
you know what?
but he's been kept out too.
But you know what? And I tell you right now, I don't think that any of them should ever get into the Hall of Fame. And that's just my opinion. I'm sure other people
I
have
disagree.
other points of view. And
Here's why
go
I
right
disagree.
Ahead. Go ahead, tell us.
It's only illegal in the country at the time to get prescription steroids. I mentioned it last night on our show. Again, if you don't miss that, try to watch both shows, folks. I mean, there's great insights everywhere. But think about it. Baseball had no rules. Even though it was illegal to take pharmaceutical steroids, people have done it for years. There's been drug abuse in baseball. How do you play 162 games? Read the book Ball 4, Smoking Jim. Read a few pages of it. You'll love some of the stories. Jim Bouton's stories, they had bowls of greenies that they took. This is documented. They didn't even deny that. Guys would take greenies. They'd have a breakfast of champions, beers and greenies in the morning.
But you know what? Even though it may not have been illegal to buy these things, it goes against the integrity of the game. It was cheating, plain and simple. I mean, and everybody that has anything to... One thing I admire about Mark McGwire is Mark McGwire has finally come to grips with the fact that, yes, what I did was wrong, what I did was cheating, and I did it deliberately, and I accept responsibility for it. He even sat down his children and explained to them what Daddy did, because they were getting to the age where they were going to hear stuff like this. The internet's got all this information out there. So instead of his children finding it out from somebody else, he explained to them what he did, why he did it, how it was wrong that he did it, and that, he has to live with the consequences of it.
Chip.
And I admire the man for admitting.
Well, my thing is, sure, we all deserve a second chance, but he got caught. He had that creatine. He made such a farce of that. That's what was so amazing. He had his locker with creatine because that was a front for the steroids. Now, weightlifters use it. All you guys that are a nutritionist and guys that play sports, you know about creatine and all that stuff. So he made a mockery of what true athletes that don't take drugs use. And they knew that he wasn't getting that big just on creatine. So, I mean, these are some of the things that some of us are naive. I know I was naive on a lot of that stuff. And sure, it's great that he come out with it now because he has a clear conscience. And guess what? He got a job in baseball because of that. And I always believe, just follow the money. And I'm still looking for some heroes in sports. Remember Charlie Batch. He's a hero in sports.
But by the same token, Mark McGwire has a job in baseball. He'll never enter the Hall of Fame.
Exactly, and that's one of the reasons. You're exactly right. Now, I think they should have a shot. I'm not the commissioner, and we're running out of time. That'll be a topic for maybe next week, next month, but during the baseball winter meetings. Thanks to Big Mike Butera on our 60th show, Smoking Jim Frazier, Chip the Prophet Hayner, Al Levine the Talking Machine. Thank you very much. I don't know what happened. Who's winning the Steeler game, guys?
Pittsburgh.
Smoking Jim.
I wouldn't be surprised if San Diego pulled
Okay.
it out.
Big Mike.
Their Steelers are running out the season.
I'm with Big Mike, folks. That's it for our show. They're going to run the table. They're going to make me right. 11-5, folks. You heard it here. Don't bet the house, though. Have a great night. Don't forget the blood drive on the 29th. You'll hear me say it another time next week or two.
Lance Armstrong, stay home.
Have a great night, folks. Thanks for watching the show.
This looks like hide and seek, but it's not. Kids often withdraw when their needs aren't being met. It would be easier if they said, I need a little one-on-one time. But it's up to us, their parents, to learn their language. And once you figure it out, you don't really have to say much at all. A thought from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Behind the wheel, there is no such thing as a small distraction. A public service reminder from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons. Speak out against distracted driving at decidetodrive.org.